We can just put a sentence that says, be more explicit in the doc strings.
Lost your camera. It looks like your battery is... Welcome, everyone. This is our first episode of the Noobcast. My name is Sarah. I work for Coiled. We've got Naty here with us too, and Richard. Richard, what's the Noobcast? What are we doing here again?
Yeah, good question. I think the idea was that all three of us are relatively new to some of the things that we do. And as we are pretty new, we encounter things that are difficult sometimes. And we thought it would be fun to work through some of those difficult things live on recording and share them with folks who might be encountering similar issues.
Yeah, I agree. I think like even though we are always learning and always like learning new stuff, and then we're a little bit a step away of a noob, we always just fall into another kind of noob. So I think it will be great to share that.
Okay, so who's the noob today? Nice,
Hey.
Richard.
Yes. And I even, so we did a little preparation for this thing, right? I went a little overboard and I got myself a little noob-hat.
Oh, nice. Well,
so
This does not belong to my daughter. It does not belong to my daughter. It's mine forever.
All right, so what would you like to learn today? And what are we going to do?
Yeah, we all do a lot of work with Dask. I write a lot about Dask. I give Dask tutorials, but I've actually never made a code contribution to Dask. And it's something that I've been wanting to do for a long time, but I'm super intimidated by it. I don't know how to get started. So yeah, I often run into things where I'm like, oh, I think the actual fix I could do, but I don't know how the process works. And then, yeah, it's something I would love to learn.
Why don't we just try to find something that is kind of like an introduction to a contribution? Like you got to remember that contributing to open source is not only contributing code, there are multiple ways of doing it, filing an issue or like adding documentation or starting a discussion.
Naty, can we back up 1 second? What counts?
Yeah.
What is open source? Is that just anything that's free?
I might be wrong, but my understanding of open source is like it's not only is free, but then also you have access to the source code. And in general, like we do want to, whenever we go into a repository or things like that, you want to look for licenses. So then that kind of like, you know what's the agreement of the contribution and then like how that kind of like be used or what is the contract that you are kind of having between the user and the people that produce the software.
And Naty, you're actually not a noob at this, right? You contribute a lot of code, and that's why you're the one who's going to teach me something, right?
You got me there a little bit. I've done some contributions to small open source projects in the past, and then when I started on Coil, one of my main jobs is to contribute to Dask.
Great. So it sounds like maybe a good place to start is somewhere with improving the documentation or maybe a doc string. Part of how I have spent my time is helping people use Dask and answering their questions on our Dask discourse. And one question that's popped up a number of times is with the functionality for Dask data frame. So in Dask data frame, there's a function where you can split a string column that has multiple strings in it, and you can split all of those strings based on a pattern. That function exists in pandas. So Dask data frame has a lot of the same functionality as pandas, but in Dask instead. And this particular function, the doc string, I think it needs a little help. I think it's not entirely clear how to use it for Dask, and I think that's been tripping people up lately. So maybe we could start there.
You want to share your screen and then maybe show us a little bit the issue?
Yeah, so this is an issue that I created around this Stack Overflow question. And this was just internally to track where we can improve the documentation at some point, but then I actually didn't get around to creating a formal issue around it. So maybe that can be our first step, is creating an issue in the Dask repo.
That sounds like something I can do. And I mean, like Naty, as someone who's involved in like maintaining open source libraries, would you consider that a useful contribution, like even just opening an issue?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like, especially as like we have like some time fogs that are like Dask users, but then they might not be familiarized with the source code, and they found a lot of problems that maybe we didn't catch on the test and stuff. So if you open an issue and then you're like clear enough, so then we can reproduce that issue, then we can track down where the problems are and then eventually fix it. If you open an issue, doesn't mean that you have to fix it. If you know how to, that's awesome. But if you don't know how to, then that's also welcome, because otherwise we wouldn't know.
That's helpful to know, because for me, when I'm just opening issues, I always feel like kind of just the kind of like, what's the word? The buzzkill, kind of like, hey, pointing out problems, but not solving them. But you're saying it's actually a useful thing.
But we'll see now, probably when we open an issue, that a lot of like open source projects have a template of opening an issue, and they're asking you for a lot of information. The reason why that information is being asked is because it's helpful when we're trying to solve the issue. If you just like write a question and say, hey, why does this doesn't work? Then there's no way that we can help you. So I think trying to follow those instructions is a good exercise. And as soon as you're polite and nice, everything is welcome.
Great. So we are starting by opening an issue, correct?
Yep.
Where do I go? Lead me.
All right. So if you didn't know where the code of a project lives, what is the first thing that you will try to do?
I would go, to GitHub and search for Dask.
All right. Or even Google it.
Yeah. Sure.
But... So you can do Dask space GitHub and then see what happens.
Sure.
Let's just go in and then see if that is the repository we're looking into.
Okay.
All right. So here we are like in the main repository of Dask, and we would like to open an issue. So we'll go to issues, where it's
Sorry,
like...
question, Naty. Yeah. I see here Dask. Why should I be doing something here?
Let's go back. Yeah, okay. So here, Dask as an organization has multiple projects that are related to Dask and connected to Dask. This is a great question because sometimes we don't know where the contribution should go. Sometimes what will happen is if we're on the wrong place, like a maintainer would tell us, hey, this issue actually belongs to this other repo. So then they will like politely like just either move it over or they suggest that you open it in a different one. Currently, because of the issue that we're seeing is with Dask data frames, we will go to Dask.
Okay, so that will be this one here.
Yes.
Is there, are there general instructions here? Like I thought there might be a README or something to kind of...
So in general, like if you scroll down, like when you land into a main repository, there are multiple things that you look for. The Dask repository has a link to the documentation, but doesn't say anything about contributions there. In general, like if I'm looking into a repo for signals or, hey, I want to contribute, what do I do? There tends to be a file called contributing.md. So that's usually at the main level. Actually, there's one over there. So let's click on there. And it's sending us, so it says, we welcome contributions in the form of bugs, documentation, code, design. This will have the guidelines of how to get started to contribute. If we just want to open an issue, you go directly to issues. Well, we'll get back to this one when we try to fix something. So if we go to issues, usually click over there and you want to open a new issue. In general, like a good practice will be to search if there is an issue related to this. So maybe what could be good keywords that we could search here for?
Right. So I'm just going to go back to this issue here. What we're dealing with an issue in the doc string for this method, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Is that something? Could I just copy paste that method? Well, that's kind of maybe different.
Maybe we can look for data frame string split as separate words. So
like that?
Something like that. Yeah. Let's see if something shows up. There are some things, but doesn't seem to be related. I think like we're good.
Sometimes it's so hard to tell if an issue is or isn't related when you're not incredibly familiar with the code base. You know, the Dask developers are really friendly and they totally understand that it's sort of doing your best effort to go check and see if there's something obvious. So I think this was a great first step. And
if by any chance someone else opened an issue related to this and we didn't find it, maintainers will point us out and said, hey, this was it's a duplicate, or this was open over here, and then they're kind enough to let us know that this was already raised. But for now, let's just open a new issue, and now we'll land into, okay, and this could be a little bit intimidating because what we are seeing is, like, the issue we were seeing is not necessarily a bug. It's just like there are some issues on how things work on the Dask end. It's not technically a feature request, so because we're not asking to add a feature, and it's not a security vulnerability thing. So in cases like this, what I would go is click on either feature request, or probably maybe get, like if it was a bug report, and then explain that it's not necessarily a bug, but it's something, there's something missing in there. So let's click the bug report. And all right, so we need to put a title first. So what title would you suggest?
Sorry, Naty, but how come there's so much text in here already?
Yeah, so this is part of the template, and it's basically, if you click on preview, so
okay.
this is actually how it's going to look after we add all those stuff. So the Dask maintainers are like kind of like leading us the way on how to file a bug report or some issue. So then when they read it, they have enough information to get started and solve it. So let's go back to write. Let's pick a title. So the issue we were seeing is, if we go to, I guess, to the original Stack Overflow question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what would be a good name for this issue? Sometimes I look for what's the description of what they say. Initially,
From how I understand this question, the problem is that if you are trying to split a column, which is a string content, into an unknown number of columns, that's something that works in Pandas, but it doesn't work in Dask. Sarah, I think, didn't you answered this Stack Overflow question, right?
Yeah, Richard, that summary is spot on. And I think with that, maybe our title could include something like improve docstring for the method that we're talking about. So we want to note that we're talking about the docstring. We want to note the specific method, which is dataframe.series.string.split. And I think we could include in the title that it's related to that n parameter, n for the number of splits you want to do, but that may be too much for a title. Maybe we include that in the description. So I think the main things are we're talking about a documentation related bug, and we want to mention the exact method that we're talking about.
Yeah. So in this case, it's good to mention that we are already sort of suggesting how to solve the issue, which is like improving the docstrings, the documentation. And the reason why we want to do that is because currently this method is not implemented for Dask data frames, and is not easy to implement. So
can we? Sorry, Naty, sorry to interrupt, but why is it not implemented?
So currently, to be able to do the split, is like you need to know like a way of calculating in the amount of places where you would do the split, And Dask data frames, before being computed, are lazy evaluated. So we don't know where things start or finish in advance necessarily. So it will require to do like a pre-computation to know where to do the split. I believe that I'm not sure if it's impossible to implement it, but in general, when something is different from pandas and it hasn't been implemented, usually a good recommendation is just to be more clear in the doc strings and be more clear in the documentation.
Yeah. So just to make sure that I understand, right? So Dask data frame aims to like copy or use the pandas syntax as much as possible because people know that and it's familiar. But the big difference between pandas and Dask is that pandas works like sequentially on a single core, and Dask can process computations in parallel, right? And that's where this tension comes in, right?
And also it doesn't. The other thing is, part of working with Dask and then having task graphs in the back and all this machinery that allow us to do this is that things are what it's called lazily evaluated, which means it's like they're not completely exposed or computed until we need them. So unless that I explicitly say, hey, compute this, we don't do it. So in advance, it could be a little bit hard to know this stuff. I believe that in the Stack Overflow question, there was a little bit of an explanation on what's going on there, and then why it's hard or could be hard to implement this. I do not, I don't recall specifically, but I think yes. If we read there, it says, thus we still need to know how many columns to expect in order to lazily produce a Dask data frame. And that could be a little bit of a challenge. But so this is like another lesson for contributions and stuff. Usually when we're trying to contribute, not always we could fix the whole problem, but we could be on a better position than what we were before. And that's a totally valid contribution.
So when I read this the first time, I thought, not implemented error. Maybe what I should do is implement it. But that was super intimidating because I don't necessarily know how to do that. But you're saying even just updating the doc string is a good first step. And then maybe someone else can come along and say, hey, I know how to implement this thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Richard, if someone else is able to figure their way out of this same sort of question, that is a huge win. That'd be awesome.
Let's go to the title and let's try to write this. So if we see like what's the first question that it's added there. So it usually says, please include the first line. It says, please include a self-contained copy-pastable example that generates this issue. So in general, like we want to provide this and something that is simple, so then we can reproduce the error. So one good first step is if we try to run the same thing that was run in the Stack Overflow, we should see the same error. So the code will be that. So before we could trust the Stack Overflow question as a good practice, I would suggest that locally you have things installed and then try yourself. If you have an environment where Dask is installed, you will be able to do it. If not, we'll have to go through the installation.
Cool. Yeah, no, I have an environment with Dask locally that we could use. Shall I spin that up?
Yeah, let's do it.
And then I guess maybe just an IPython session would work for this.
Yeah, that will do.
That's great.
Okay. And then, Naty, your suggestion was to just run the code in the Stack Overflow answer that would generate the error, just to make sure. Because why are we making sure? Like, what could happen here?
So what could happen is like between the time that the question was raised and the time that you are reporting the error, then maybe someone just went ahead and fixed it. And that could be something that doesn't necessarily work. So Yeah, we just try that. That should give us a... Yep. Okay, so things don't work.
Because this is a lot of error message for me. What is it saying? It's saying not implemented. To use the expand parameter, you must specify the number of expected splits with the n parameter. Okay, so this is what we were saying earlier, that because Dask hasn't read all of the data, it doesn't know how many possible columns there are going to be.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So don't close that terminal. Let's go back. So copy the code into the issue. So one good way of copying code is like if you, so right under the first, go all the way up under the first line of the issue, and right under there, if you do 3 backticks, it's on the top, usually in my, yeah, and then if you put Python next to it,
Yeah, exactly.
and then close 3 backticks up, sorry, on a lower level, I guess. Yeah, and then inside that, the backticks, just paste the code there. So check on the preview. Okay.
Oh, wait, yeah, it needs to be outside the, yeah.
Oh, we accidentally put it in the comment, huh?
Yeah. Shall I, can I just get rid of this comment? I've read it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can say, yeah, you can write something. It should technically work with that, but there might be another backtick included there. So you can say that returns that. Something that I like to do sometimes is like in the part that says what happened. So if you scroll down and below that, just insert another code thing. That is, I think you can do Python-traceback.
Yeah, exactly, Naty.
I think if you do
Python
traceback,
Yep. And then
again backticks, and then inside there you can actually copy your error message. Literally
Nice.
copy and paste.
I
You
didn't
can
know
copy
this.
everything, or you can copy just the last part. But everything for this case should do. If you paste it there. So I believe in the preview now should look. There you go. So you have the traceback, and
Nice. Okay.
when it says what would you expect to happen, we can mention that this is some method that works in pandas, but doesn't work here. We are currently not going to fix it, but proper documentation to help the user know what's happening would be useful.
Okay, so just there's a lot happening right now. Just to back it up a little bit, I haven't written any words yet. Is that okay? Like I've just to put the code in.
At the top, I usually write something explaining what happened. So you could say, we noticed that this question from the question on Stack Overflow, just to mention that it came, and then you can put the link. You get, yeah, I think then it would be useful if we modify the doc strings to give the user a better experience. I don't know if that's the right thing to say. And then you could say, currently, this piece of code returns a not implemented error. And I don't know what else we could say.
I think I would also include, Naty, the last piece, which is what is the current doc string for this.
Oh, okay. So...
Sorry, just 1 minute. I'm just going to finish my sentence here. 1 moment.
Sorry, Richard.
It would be useful
No
to
rush.
modify the doc strings for Dask data frame series string not split. Well, okay.
So I think Sarah got a great point, is that we're saying to improve the doc strings. So let's find the doc strings for this method and then see why this is not helpful.
Right. Because the error message is relatively clear, right?
Yes. So if we go to another tab and search for Dask docs, we'll just get the Dask documentation. And here, usually I will go and search on the docs, like in the search bar, the method that we're trying to do. So, and see what do we get. Searching.
Oh.
All right, so it's the first one. And we have some information here. So.
Right, so it says this method split strings around a given separator or delimiter. And then it says something that I've seen a lot in Dask data frame docs, like this doc string was copied from pandas, blah, blah, blah. Some inconsistencies with the Dask version may exist. So this is referring to what we were talking about earlier, right? Because like the difference between pandas working sequentially on a single core and Dask working in parallel.
Right. So a lot of the Dask code comes from as a distributed implementation of things that happen in pandas or in NumPy. And in general, like to be consistent with the methods in pandas or NumPy, we copy the doc strings, like the documentation from one to the other, to maintain this consistency and then not generate different names for something that does the same. So that has its advantages, but it also has disadvantages. Like whenever we implement a method or like a new function or things in the Dask side that are like a quote unquote copy of the Panda side, we might not be able to do everything. There are certain things that are not easy to implement. And in this case, what's happening is the doctrines are the exact same doctrines that in pandas. So this is the part that is causing controversy. We have a warning that says that some inconsistencies with Dask version may exist. Unfortunately, to the user, that doesn't give it like enough information. So if we can improve this, then that will be great.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, just as someone like who onboarded onto Dask recently, like for me, this was always kind of a scary thing to read because it was like some inconsistencies may exist. It's like, okay, where are they? Like,
yeah.
Where are the inconsistencies? Yeah.
So, but basically, maybe what I hear you suggesting is we found a specific inconsistency, which is a string dot split with unknown number of columns. So maybe we can add that specific case into the doc string to say this is one specific known inconsistency.
Yeah. So now what we're doing is basically reporting into an issue all this experience. So if whether it's us or someone else coming trying to contribute to make the experience better, they will know where things live, what's happening, and the more context, the better. So that makes it easier to contribute. So great. I would put a link. I will copy this link, and then just literally mentioning that we found one inconsistency. Let's just be explicit about this one at least. This is like something that happens across like multiple Dask data frames methods or even array methods. Like I would strongly suggest that if you run into one of these inconsistencies, then you can follow the process that we're doing here. So and open an issue, reporting what's the inconsistency and then how could it be explained better.
Yeah, this is definitely not the only place where we don't necessarily state explicitly in the doc string which inconsistencies exist.
Yeah, this will happen a lot, and I think it would be nice, like if some folks like already know about this ones, start opening issues with this stuff, and hopefully, if you feel savvy, then you can go and contribute this, and we're going to try to go through the process too. But if not, an issue is totally welcome, and that will be great. All right, so we have a good chunk of explanation, and it says the what happened, then we got the error reported. I think that there is another part that is what would you expect? I think we could probably, what would you expect to happen is, I guess that we could say,
I mean, we're not really expecting any change in the code, right? Like,
no,
we're
in
not
this case,
expecting
we're
a different
not.
error warning.
Yes. What would you expect to happen? We can just put a sentence that says, be more explicit in the doc strings about this issue.
About known inconsistencies. All right,
Correct.
so we wrote what you expected to happen, and now it's asking for a minimal complete verifiable example. We basically have that already, right?
Yes. So this is something that is very kind of important. We already put it in there. Like usually we have links of what is a minimal complete verifiable example. We delete that, but it's something that is short, consistent, that anyone can copy and paste and run right away. So I think, we can delete this part from the issue at the moment. Anything else we need to know? I don't think so at the moment.
Maybe we should grab the Dask version, Naty?
Yes, in the environment parts, yes, we should mention Dask version. I just run this into, let me see. I guess probably you could say that this happens on main, but I don't want to say main because main is a different thing. You run it in. Do you have the terminal open where you run this?
Yeah.
Can you do import Dask and Dask version? Yeah, what is suggesting there? Like just press the right arrow and then see. Okay, so that one is that version. In general, one thing that people would recommend is if you can also test on the latest release is fine. We could check that eventually. For now, it just works.
Okay.
What's your Python version?
That should say it on my IPython, right?
Yeah, the top.
There, yeah.
8.9.13. Yeah, and the last part, you can remove it. These are details for when you're running things at scale, and then if things just crash, and that.
Okay.
If this is something that you right away will be interested to work on, right after I'll put in this issue, then I will add a comment that says, I would like to work on this. And then so you already assign it to yourself in a way that if someone comes to here, then you don't have two people working at the same time on the same issue.
Yeah. And so, just a question, like if I do it the other way around, right? If I want to fix something in Dask, is it good practice to open the issue first and then say, I'll work on it? Or should I just work on it and then contribute it later?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So in general, I would suggest that even if it's small, that you open an issue and then you assign it to yourself and you just say, I want to work on this. Because let's say that for some reason you started working on this issue, but then life happens and then you waited for a month, you come back. Maybe in that month, someone else started working on it. And then it could happen that you're doing all this work and then someone else just fix it.
Right.
Yeah, visibility is always the best in these cases.
Okay. So does this look good enough to you to submit?
Looks great.
Yeah, looks great, Richard. Well done.
And
your first issue. Is this your first issue in Dask too?
It's not my first issue. No.
All right. So are you allowed to add labels or not?
No.
Okay, I can. So then in general, what will happen is the first thing, we'll see it on a second, is that, so the needs triage means hey, this just show up and no one knows what's happening. Usually someone that is either a contributor and it has some sort of permissions. I don't have maintainer permissions, but I have some permissions that allows me to put tags. So I will put the documentation tag, and then I will also put the data frame tag. If you see those tags kind of when you are a person that wants to contribute, you can filter for those tags in the issue. So then you can go and then say, oh, I'm interested in this kind of stuff. And there is another thing called a good first issue tag. So I just added all those tags in there. So this is like when you're navigating the issue tracker. So if we go back to issues, you could filter. Like one way is like if you click on a label right in under that in the second level next to author, you could pick in that label good first issue and then click that. So that will filter all the good first issues. So if you're trying to look for what you could contribute to, then you can try to find something in here if you're new. So now we open an issue and we sort of know what we would like to do. In this case is if this is something that you would like to solve right now, then I would suggest that you could say, put a comment and then say, I'm interested in working on this issue. I'll open a PR soon or something like that.
Yeah, and that just lets the other Dask maintainers know that someone is working on it, and anyone else that comes across this issue like you, they're looking for a good first issue, they can be like, oh, great, someone else is already working on this one. I'll jump on something else.
Okay. And what's a PR, Naty?
So a PR is a pull request. So it's going to be a contribution that you will be making to the open source project. So that it's usually how like people contribute to open source projects. We're going to go through the workflow. But yeah, if you comment that, then someone can actually literally go and assign it to you and assign the issue to you, and that'll be great. So I just kind of like, if I'm like looking through the issue trackers and I see this, then I can just go and assign it to yourself. So then now if you scroll up to there and I just assign it, you can unassign yourself. Let's say that I assign it to you and then like, I assign you after you said that you wanted to work on this. No one will assign you necessarily to an issue unless you agree already on working on it. If you say, hey, life happens, I won't be able to make this change, you can unassign yourself and then comment that if someone else can take this, that will be great.
All right. Okay, to recap, Naty and Richard, today we talked about what is open source. We also learned there are a ton of different ways to contribute to open source, and the one that we covered here was creating an issue.
Yeah, that's not something I would have imagined as a contribution. That's great. Yeah.
And then, so next up on the next episode of the Noobcast, we're going to get to see you contribute via making a pull request. Is that right?
I think that's the plan, right, Naty? I mean, that's the next logical next step.
Like, we're going to learn how to make your first contribution to an open source project. The steps will probably stop at opening the pull request, and then we'll just have to see what the maintainers say. But I'm confident that we're going to get it in, and then we'll celebrate.
Yeah, cool. I'll get the champagne cooling.
Yeah. Sounds good. And I guess I'll keep this hat for the next episode then.
Yeah, we'll keep it.
And it's got this little spinner thing.
Don't fly away on us, Richard. Well, thanks everyone for joining.
Yeah, thanks everyone. See you next time. Ciao.
Bye.